Hi everybody, Jay the Fish Guy here. Today we're going to talk about a new project that I'm working on, as if I don't have enough projects and tanks already going on. This was a tank that I acquired secondhand, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. Unfortunately, it's not a reef tank, at least not this one. There's another project coming up as well. We'll talk about that in another video, little preview on that one. So this is a 120, classic dimensions, 48 by 24 by 24. It was an overflow tank, so it had dual internal overflows. It was the all glass or Aqueon tank. It has the mega flows that are in the middle of the tank. And I'm doing this a freshwater tank. I didn't really want to use the overflows, so I cut them out. I resealed a few sections where it pulled away some of the actual structural silicone, and then I just simply plugged the bulkheads and just sealed the tank up. So what's going to be different about this tank that it's not just going to be another boring freshwater tank for all you reef people and saltwater people out there? Well, I'm doing, if you can see that, I know there's a glare, I apologize, an inside the tank three-dimensional background. These are really cool. I've done a few builds with them, and they look great once they're all said and done. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get them installed. The one company I've been using, they're a rigid foam, so you can't actually bend and twist them and get them into the tank. Luckily, I was able to actually do it with this one. Since the top of the tank, there's such large openings, and the tank is deep front to back, I was able actually to weasel that background in without actually having to cut it. So there's two ways you can do that. If you can't fit it in, you either have to take off the top trim on the tank, which if you haven't ever done one, especially on a bigger tank, it is a gigantic pain in the butt. You actually have to take a razor and go underneath all the way around the tank, inside and outside. And even then, there's still some silicone along, trying to get the angle here, there we go, along the upper edge around. And it's just, you got to actually break the seal to get the thing off and try not to break it in the process. I've done a few of them, and it's no fun. So usually how I do these backgrounds is I'll actually pick a point in the rock work that I'm following a natural line anyway, and I'll actually saw the thing in half and then reassemble it in the tank and silicone it back together. You have to silicone these in place. Since they're foam, they actually want to float. So if it's not a really tight fit, which I actually lucked out, and this one happened to be a little too big, so I was able to really wedge it in there. If you don't silicone it in place, it's just going to bloop, and it's going to float to the top, and it may not do it initially, but it will do it eventually, and it'll be a gigantic pain in the butt. You'd have to drain the tank, take all the fish out, silicone it, wait the 48 hours, and then you can put everything back in. So do that first. So this is the light fixture that I'm going to use. This is an Aqueon Optibright LED. Good for a 48-inch tank. The legs can extend out a little bit farther if you do anything up to and including a 54-inch. Has mostly white LEDs and a handful of reds and blues. The blues can be controlled independently for a so-called moon glow accent. The controls are touch sensitive, so no switches or buttons, just literally touch in the corresponding area and you can turn on the whites and blues independently. Alright, so here's the light fixture on the tank, and as you can see, it's just super low profile. I mean, we're talking probably just barely over 1/4 of an inch. It's super low profile. Has touch sensitive controls on the side here. So that's with just the whites, and then it adds in the little bit of blues that it has, and you can turn the whites off and have just the blues on as well. Apparently you can have it hooked to a timer, and it'll automatically go back to whatever the setting was when you turned it off last. Meaning if I unplug it and plug it back in, it's going to save the fact that I have both the blues and the whites on. So it is timer compatible, they claim right on the package. And they're saying that it's 70% more energy efficient than a comparable single bulb T8 fixture, which, I mean, is crazy because those things barely used any energy at all, even a 4-footer. So it's just a great looking little light fixture. All right, so here's my choice for aquarium gravel in this particular setup. Even though I like bare bottom in my reef tanks, and that's explained in one of my previous videos, I really don't like it in my freshwater tanks. It's not a look I really enjoy. The aquascaping, you kind of have to be limited to like a chunk of driftwood or some artificial plants that are glued to something heavy. You can see all the waste and excess bits of food lingering around. Typically, you don't have enough flow in there to really kick them up, to get them filtered out. And I don't like the look. So I enjoy gravel in my freshwater aquariums. I think it's a little bit more natural looking. I like, when you have cichlids and other bigger fish, they get to move it around and make their little caves and nests and things like that. And it's just, for me, it's aesthetically more pleasing. So I don't go the bare bottom route in my freshwater tanks. So with this setup, I chose this Estes Spectrastone gravel. It's a coated gravel. So it's no rinse, which is awesome because I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of aquarium gravel and saltwater substrate I have had to rinse over the years. So anytime I can use a product that's no rinse, I am going to use it and save myself a little bit of effort. Especially, I mean, this tank I ended up doing 125 pounds worth of gravel. It's a little bit thicker of a gravel bed. I like it so that the plants can stay buried and the ornaments can stay a little more buried. I'm probably going to end up doing larger cichlids, so we'll see. Gotta let the family decide and put their 2 cents in, and we'll see what I end up with. But this is the so-called walnut color. Just a nice natural mix of tans and browns. I enjoy it. Good contrast to the background and probably to the fish I'll end up getting. Alright, so we are filling up the tank. If you guys haven't ever used one and you have freshwater aquariums, the Python drain and fill system, which I'll put a link down in the description for you, probably one of the greatest inventions of all time for making water changes super simple, and in this case using an aquarium safe hose to fill up the tank. So garden hoses, if you just get an off-the-shelf garden hose and use that to fill up your tank, it's actually a bad thing. They're treated with chemicals to prevent mold and mildew. The only ones that are truly safe to use is the so-called RV drinking water safe hoses. So if you do have to use a hose to fill, use one of those. Or spend the money and get one of these Python systems, which is just a great investment. It hooks up to your sink or to a garden hose style spigot, and you close a valve, you can fill right from the spigot. If you open this T valve, water flows through it, creates a venturi, and it actually drains your tank. So you can actually gravel vacuum and do your water change without lugging buckets, which again is a huge help for folks with freshwater tanks that have larger tanks. And if you're doing a 50% water change on a 120 gallon tank, that's a lot of buckets to be lugging around. So that's where the Python makes it very friendly. The only downside is that if you pay for water, if you're on town water, there is some waste involved, meaning that when you have the spigot on and the valve is open, so you're creating this venturi to pull the water from your tank, you are wasting the water that goes through that valve. So that might be a concern for some folks. Something to keep in mind. For me, I'm on a well and it doesn't really matter too much for me. It's definitely worth worth the water use for me. So one of the great things about this background is actually I'll be able to hide a fair amount of the equipment, which is another thing I really strive to do when possible. Is, you know, when you're looking in the tank, you want to see as little equipment or man-made stuff as possible, at least for me. Aesthetically, it's just so much nicer if I'm not looking at cords and filter tubes and intakes and outputs and heaters, etc., etc. You know, when I look at my tank, I just want to see a chunk of the reef or a chunk of, you know, out in a lake or a river somewhere. So with this, I have an Eheim canister filter, and the intake for the filter is actually behind the background. The output is a spray bar, as you can see there, that's going to shoot across the top and move water right at the surface. So the background isn't sealed on the bottom. There's actually like a 1/4 inch gap underneath where the gravel is down there. So the water is actually going to pull through there and along the edges and then go into the intake, which will keep most of the heavy debris in the tank that I'll be able to gravel evac out when I do my monthly maintenance. And then I'm also going to be able to just tuck this heater right down inside here with a little finagling. It's already preset to the temperature I want it to be at. There we go. And just drops right down in. And the heater will sit right next to where the intake is, so it's always got water flowing past it, so it's in the highest flow area behind the background possible. So that way it stays hidden, and all we see is our background. So for filtration on this tank, I ended up going with an Eheim Professional 4+ canister filter, and it's the model 600. This puts out right around 330 gallons per hour, if I remember correctly, and it's rated for up to a 160-gallon tank. Now, I always over-filter my tank, so even though that's one filter is technically enough for this tank, I'll probably end up adding a second one or doing maybe like a Fluval FX series canister as well. And the idea behind that is, especially if I do with bigger fish, I love having the large volumes of media, the mechanical filtration, the biofiltration, and having the space to run carbon or a similar chemical media as well, just to really keep the tank looking crystal clear all the time without issues. You never have any particulates floating around. Water quality is always just top notch. And you can go a long time in between servicing the filters too. You know, the only time you really have to get in there is to change out your carbon or your chemical media. And, you know, other than that, a lot of times, depending on your bio load, you know, how many fish you have in there, how much you're feeding, what you're feeding, you might be able to go as much as 3 or 4 months in between servicing some of these bigger canister filters, which is great. Because, I mean, this is a tank I have at home. I love the hobby, I love what I do, but when I come home and, you know, spend time with the family, I don't really want to be messing around with my tanks more than I have to. I just want to enjoy a beautiful tank and enjoy my fish and save the work for when I'm on the clock. The great thing about this filter, and I don't know if you guys will be able to appreciate it on the video, but this thing is close to dead silent. A lot of people will complain about canisters and hang on the backs being noisy and being able to hear them across the room kind of thing, but if you need to go quiet, Eheims definitely are the way to go. Alright, so almost filled up, really close. Got the filter primed and running. You can see it here. We're going to fill it all the way up, so that's going to be submerged, but just simply moving and rippling the surface water, and that's where the water level will stay from that point on. So that about wraps it up for day one on this project. We're going to leave it as you see it for probably a couple of days. I gotta get in there, check the pH, make sure that's squared away. Heater's running, filter's running. I have some rocks and some artificial plants. Gotta pick through and see what I want to get in there. I was thinking about driftwood, but I'm not quite sure yet. We'll see what it looks like once the other stuff gets in there. I'm going to be out doing some shopping for some fish for a client tomorrow. I may end up coming home with something. It depends on what they have. If they don't have anything I like, then I'll probably end up hitting up one of my wholesalers and doing a larger fish order. I have a couple of clients that have some special requests as well, so it might be a good time to just do a big order and get some cool stuff in. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hope you're enjoying the videos, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.